Hey, Michael here. It's the 10th episode of the podcast, a special arbitrary milestone. But before I begin the episode with Ruba, I want to dedicate this episode to a couple of people. Firstly, I'd like to dedicate this episode to both of my grandmothers, one of whom I mentioned in this episode. Mary Lou Zarick is still kicking in Cincinnati, but these past few weeks she has encountered some health issues, so please keep her and any of your own grandparents close to your heart. I would appreciate that greatly. I also want to dedicate this episode to the people of Palestine, who now more than ever need you to keep them on your mind and on your lips. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to have spoken to Ruba, a daughter of Palestinian immigrants, and I look forward to sharing this episode with you. Thanks so much for listening. Hello, my name is Michael Zarick. This is Third Space Indy. In this show, we talk to people who are community builders, leaders, and organizers all over Indianapolis who are working to make the places they live in Indianapolis better. Today, we are talking to Ruba Marshood, the CEO of Indy Reads in Fountain Square. Previously, before 2021, when she came to Indy Reads, Ruba was the partnerships and engagement person, counselor, leader, director.
Sure.
I don't know what the word is, of the Literary Council of Northern Virginia. And
it was the Literacy Council.
Literacy.
So that happened a lot with that organization where it was literacy, not literary. But yeah.
I wrote literary. Anyways, that's
okay.
fine.
You're great.
And then you were also a Palestinian immigrant. Or were you born here?
I was actually my parents are the immigrants, and I was born here. My brother.
And then
was
you're
an
from
immigrant.
the Northeast, like New Jersey.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
It was one of these things that I had to figure out. It was not on the internet, I promise. So I think that might play into a lot of your, I hope your personality is you're a strong, outgoing woman because of your time in the Northeast. And then you also spent a lot of time in other places,
Yes.
though I'm not quite sure because there's quite a few. And then you also are bilingual. No. Well, 2.5.
Sure.
No?
Yeah.
I'm just making it up.
No.
So you know Arabic, Levantine Arabic,
Yes.
and then English, and then the Papua New Guinea language, which I do not know the name of.
I'm just impressed by your homework. Yeah. Cuisine is. I haven't had to use it in a while, so I'd be rusty if you tried to quiz me on that right now. But yep, a tiny bit of Spanish.
Okay. And then we'll do it again. Assalamu alaikum, Ruba. How are you doing?
Alaikum assalam, Michael. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Why don't you actually, what I really want to start off by asking you is when I first reached out to Sam Ferrante, who is the comms director of Indy Reads, she asked me a very poignant question, which has been on my mind since she asked me, which is, are you a reader? And that sent me spiraling because I answered no. And then she told me about your students here and how many of them consider themselves readers despite being struggling to read. And it really sent me. So then I made it my goal to read a couple of books before we talked. So in your own words, what does it mean to be a reader?
Oh goodness, what a question! I think sometimes when we, you shared with me how that question took you, and are you a reader? And my response would be a reader of what or in what way, right? Because I think every day, book or no book, we're reading. We're reading other people. We're reading our spaces. We're reading our experiences. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but when I think about being a reader and what Indy Reads is about, yes, we read books. Yes, we learn to speak and communicate in English. And yes, we get to learn and read and engage with each other as people and as community members.
That was a beautiful answer. I really like that, because I think even outside of the concept of like literally reading, like, oh, here's a book, I spend a lot of time like learning and trying to understand the world around me. So if you consider that sort of reading, I would say maybe yes, maybe I am a reader.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you giving me that sort of self-fulfillment, I suppose. Okay, so let's talk about Indy Reads. The reason I know about you, as we just discussed, is I was just walking down Shelby Street. What is this?
Shelby, Virginia.
Oh, Virginia Street. Yeah. And I just saw the Indy Reads sign, and then I saw the words 100% literacy for all, which is a mighty task, because as my wife works for the local TV news, and when she writes scripts, I believe she writes them at a third grade level, because that is what the average viewership can sort of understand. They don't use like large $20 words, big long words, because they're trying to appeal to the viewership. And a lot of that sort of plays into your goal of, the average person in the US reads at a fifth grade level. Is that right?
Below. Yeah.
Below. So can you tell me about you and your work at Indy Reads?
That's a big question about me and Indy Reads.
Oh, yeah, okay. We got all day.
Well,
not all
yeah.
day. You definitely don't have all day.
Well, I'll just share. So I came into this role, as you said, at the tail end of 2021. I grew up on the East Coast. I'm the child of Palestinian immigrants, as you, I think you just said that. And I worked in international development space. I've always loved people and experiences and cultures, and had basically kind of come into adulthood with the idea, okay, how do I make travel, photography, getting to know people part of my daily life? And so international development was my first avenue for that. Long story short, found myself back in the States around what I've been calling kind of the Obama recession era, and feeling like I had been thinking globally, acting globally for a long time, and wanted to think globally, act locally. And I actually started volunteering with the Literacy Council of Northern Virginia while I was trying to figure out what I would be doing, when an opening came up and I was able to kind of move into that role and really kind of 10 years later, you blink, and I had learned so much about both sort of domestic nonprofit work, community organizations, the work of building and moving an organization and a mission forward, as well as the field of adult education in the country, certainly in the region. We were in the DC area at that time. And yeah, 10 years later, I got a call from a recruiter who said there's an adult literacy organization.
They reached out to you?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
There's an adult literacy organization in Indianapolis looking for a CEO. And I'll just confess, my first reaction was, kind of looking around like, why are you calling me? Like, I really didn't get it. And I thought, well.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
I totally forgot to mention, this is actually in my notes. Every person, I said, I'm going to Indy Reads. I'm getting to I have the opportunity to talk to Ruba. Every single person has said a variation of Ruba is great. Ruba is deeply intelligent. Ruba is like, you're the most complimented person on earth.
That's very kind.
I genuinely
goodness.
like Bill Brooks yesterday
was like, he just hit me with like the accolades. So I promise you that if you don't feel that way, at least externally, I think other people see something. I'm learning in this moment. So
that's very, very kind. And I part of me wants to critique, like, well, I mean, what survey data are you like? And how many people are you talking about? Because that
minimum 10.
What really?
I'm serious. I genuinely, still a small survey size, and also they may have been biased because the people I talk to are of a certain way of thinking, but they all are aware of of Indy Reads and know who you are. So that, I don't know, that.
Well, that's very, very kind. That's nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that means a lot.
Now, if you take a small vacation from your work, you may get out into the community and hear that more often.
We actually were closed last week for a week of wellness.
I knew that.
But I spent it in New Jersey. Kids and I went and visited my parents. So I was not here roaming the streets and
Definitely. You're roaming different streets.
listening for what do people think about Ruba.
Yeah, I guess you don't have that ego.
No.
So move less selfishly. What's Indy Reads doing?
So so I got to know this organization first through that introduction. There's this organization looking for a new CEO, and I was at a point in my life where I wasn't, and I don't tend to be really ever kind of someone to close doors. So I was just sort of like, oh, let's see where this goes, and come from a place of curiosity. So my first introduction was that conversation, and then I got to meet a few members of the board who were on the executive search committee, and found that, my goodness, this group of people really care about this mission. And I've kind of promised myself going into those conversations that I was just going to be completely me, which sometimes is, at least in my experience, can be hard in a kind of job interview experience. And I thought, well, here I am. And if they're looking for a leader of this organization, they've got to know who I am. And if I want to know if this is a fit for me, I've got to be real. So I found that I was very welcomed. My perspectives and vision of what literacy for all means, for example, were welcomed. And so got to know the organization first through some of the people who help lead the organization. And then through listening to our learners, listening to staff, listening to community, patrons and partners, and learned that Indy Reads is an organization that people really value because it's a place where they feel seen, they feel welcome, and they feel supported. And that kind of grows across the board of being an organization that advances literacy for all, that has for over 40 years been doing that through adult literacy work. And then for the last, I guess close to 15 years now, through a community bookstore. What I found too is that our organization for a long time was sort of, there's the community bookstore and there's the adult education programming. And they were kind of what I would say kind of two sides of the same coin that did not really meet or intersect. And what I mean by that is, for example, our bookstore was on Mass Ave at the time. Again, it's before my time, but it was beloved. Being here and walking around introducing myself and saying I'm with Indy Reads, people would say, oh, I love Indy Reads. And they didn't know all that we did, right? I would say.
I had that same conversation with Sam. I was like, oh, that looks like a nice bookstore. I want to go. Like, it looks like a good community. I said community space. And then she started telling me about the stuff in the back, which is what I was like, oh, yes. Yes. Cool.
Yeah. And so our community bookstore space had been seen and is known as a community space, as a space with lots of, I will say, kind of literary arts and conversation and dialogue and local authors and artists and all of that. And it was not a place, if I can be so clear about this, it was not a place that those who benefited most from our adult education work were seen. And so people knew either they knew our education, the education side of our programming, or they knew the community bookstore side of our programming, and they didn't necessarily see any connection or have any overlap. And what we've been doing since we co-located here in Fountain Square, and we have kind of our main offices here, we have classroom space here, and we have our community bookstore. So that allows for real physical integration. But beyond that, there's a value and vision integration where, as a student-centered organization, we start with who are we serving? Who is the community that benefits most from literacy education and literacy in a kind of really expansive definition, which we can get into if you're open to hearing me about it. But all to say, we know that there's a reason why adults read and write below a 5th grade level of English proficiency. We know that there's a reason why there are many immigrants or multilingual folks in our community who are learning English as a new language. And we know that there are reasons why linguistic isolation is such a real thing, and that it often goes hand in hand with socioeconomic isolation, racial isolation and segregation and marginalization and all of these things. And so when we think and understand who we are serving, we then think about how do we best serve and create experiences where those voices that are heard the least can be centered. And so I hope that Indy Reads gets seen as a space that really centers the voices that we hear the least.
Banger.
Did not go into our programming, and I'm happy to do that, but that's
Give me
kind of what is Indy Reads. I hope that answers
your
that
programming is
question.
extensive, but give me the 20 word, the short.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's pretty easy to understand. Well,
we advance literacy for all. And
Yeah.
what does that mean? Is that, we do that through, I'll say, 3 primary pillars at this point. Community classrooms, where we offer adult education opportunities for folks learning to read and write, learning to speak English from really the most beginning levels and beyond. We're the only organization in the region that serves the most beginning and beyond. And all the way through earning high school equivalency diplomas, earning some workforce certifications. We have our community bookstore, which is a space for everybody to connect and share stories and learn from each other. And we have a workforce literacy program where we partner with employers and workforce training. So our workforce literacy initiative is where we partner with employers and workforce training providers who have found that opportunities for folks to enter and advance in certain industries are limited when folks, surprise, surprise, are struggling with learning to read, write, speak, and understand English proficiently. And so we tailor curriculum and instruction to help folks be able to more readily access and advance in those industries.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why this popped into my head. Is this 100% English literacy, or do you also support other languages? I recently went to Puerto Rico for my honeymoon. Shout out.
Congrats.
Thank you. Got married last year. But I was so inspired to learn Spanish while I was there. Then I learned that you do Spanish conversation hours. Do you sell alternate language books?
Oh, yeah. So 100% literacy for all, with English as the, I don't want to say the goal, but sort of the focal point because of where we are. Mm-hmm. And again, understanding who we serve, we have a beautifully rich, multicultural, multilingual community here at Indy Reads. And so we get to learn from our learners as much as our learners might be coming here to improve their English. Mm-hmm. And so we actually had, in my first year, we had some patrons come by who asked, do you teach Spanish? And today, our Spanish conversation circle was born initially through questions like that, but more so when we connected with one of our adult learners who was learning English with us. He's a literature professor from Mexico, and he leads our Spanish conversation circles, which are here in the bookstore once a month. So if you want to learn Spanish,
I will be here.
Who better to learn from than Professor Victor?
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited. I have apps. I have thing. I'm locked in. Although I've said the same thing about Arabic too, and I only know like 4 words. So. But I guess that's the 4 words is the start. Yeah.
And as for the books, you asked about books. So yes, we have we make a point when we think literacy for all, how does that show up in a bookstore? We have books that are available at every price point, including free or pay what you can. Most of our books are provided really thanks to people who donate their gently used books to us. And we have specific initiatives to increase and expand the multilingual book inventory that we have, and certainly to, again, center, highlight, make space for the stories and authors who may be considered more marginalized or harder to come upon.
Right. Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm coming Friday to learn to be a volunteer.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm
That's so exciting.
But for the people, when this comes out in late July, or whenever they're listening, how do I become a volunteer?
Well, you come to a volunteer orientation session, as you're planning to do.
I am planning.
on Friday.
It's in the calendar.
Good. Good. Yeah, we hold them at least monthly. And you'll get to meet our volunteer and community engagement coordinator, Lee Bennett, who will introduce you to really all of what the organization does and our different programming, and then the different ways that you can be engaged.
And your programs go even beyond the store. I attended Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, excellent.
At the Can.
Can.
We did a book discussion afterwards. I had never seen the movie before. I read the book in college. It all flooded back to me. I recalled why I really enjoyed reading Pride and Prejudice in college. It's so modern and nice. Which gets me into book reading. I want to talk about book reading because, like I said, when I talked to Sam, when she asked me, "Are you a reader?" and I said no, one of my stated goals, I wrote it in a post. One of my stated goals for the year is to read to better understand my own beliefs. And I had failed up until this point. But over the past month, I've read through almost 4 books, 2 of them in this past week. And I'm going to read them to you, read the names. The first one is Disappearance of Rituals by Byung-Chul Han. He's a Korean anthropologist. Is that true? I hope that's true. The second one is The Service Berry by Robin Wall Kimmer. She wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, which is another very good book. And then the third is Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut. And that's because the third one is because I talked to Khalid Khalifi, who works at the Can, and the Can is named after the Can that's in Cat's Cradle. Have you read that book? No, that's okay. There's like a fake religion in the book, and that Can is a thing in the book.
That's so neat to know.
I had some revelations about both myself, and I want to get into that, but about reading while I read these books, and I'm really interested to share them with you, and I want to hear your thoughts as well. So the first 2 I mentioned, The Disappearance of Rituals and The Service Berry, are both very centered on this idea of community, very much the theme of this podcast, and how we live in a time where we are so much more isolated from each other for a variety of reasons. There's a lot of it involves money and things like that, but I'm not really going to focus on the reasons, but rather the solutions, or what I learned through these books. And frankly, a lot of that comes down to searching for connection. The Service Berry specifically, she used this term that I really enjoyed. In fact, I liked that one slightly better than the other one because it was more uplifting. She used this term of an economy of gift giving, which I really enjoyed. And just sort of seeking out what we have previously always known, which is that we are more, or let me rephrase, we are stronger as a community, as friends, as people who are together. And that's something I really found endearing. And I have such profound thoughts in my head, but it's so hard to get them out.
You're doing great.
Thank you. And what I found while reading is that these are all things that I believed, but through reading someone else's thoughts as they put it on the page, I really doubled down on my beliefs and was able to challenge what I believed while also finding a re-understanding of what I believed. That was like really cool. And
That's
topically,
beautiful. And I'm so happy for you.
thank you. And I'm going to keep reading. So I mentioned this before we started, but I have this book by Rafat Al-Arir. It's titled If I Must Die. Are you familiar with this book?
I'm familiar with his poem. Yeah,
Okay.
with that one.
And I'm going to read that also. And I was like, I want to find, because I'm familiar that he was an educator, a writer, a poet, all of these things. And he was killed by an airstrike in Gaza in 2023. And I was like, I want to find something in here because I knew he would write about it because he was an educator about what writing means. And I was kind of annoyed because it's on the very first page.
You still have to go further. You can't just stop.
No, there's more in there. So he has a quote on the very first page, which says, writing in general is an obligation to ourselves and to humanity and to the future generations, because it's usually the most important thing that we leave behind. And writing is the most important sort of understanding. When you speak to people, you usually choose words randomly, as I have been in this moment. But when you write, you think carefully what message you want to convey. And I that immediately, I was like, first page. Do you have thoughts about what I have personally learned, and maybe about what Rafat said?
I do. I have lots of thoughts. I think one of the best gifts we can give ourselves is experiences that help us better understand ourselves and each other. So, listening to you as you reflect on the books that you've recently read and how it's opened that I want to just say opened more of that for yourself is a beautiful thing. I think about, I agree with what Rafat said there about writing being something with so much intention. And I'll kind of counter as well that as human beings, we have been speaking for a lot longer than we have been writing. And we are social creatures. And I think the way that we understand, to his point about it's our responsibility to humanity, literacy then encompasses all that it can mean to be human with and for each other. And we build entire civilizations through sharing language and ideas and coming upon some agreed frame of guidelines. Mm-hmm. And so absent literacy, when we understand it meaning like the ability to communicate, let's just say, and like to have an idea, to put words to that idea, to be able to convey that idea, and then to learn and be open and curious to the other ideas around us, I think is how we both build connection, deepen a sense of togetherness and belonging, and get to co-create the world that we live in.
You have such a way with words. I also want to say, when I was looking through this book earlier, and I was only reading the quotes and the poems, I was like tearing up.
I mean, no, but when you brought it into the space, I teared up and I thought, oh gosh, if we talk about this, we might need to get some tissues.
I hope not. So to continue, actually, this is also reading related. There's another quote that I really enjoyed, and it is a political quote, but the idea is what I want to focus on. And this is on page 110. It says, "Don't forget that Palestine was first and foremost occupied in Zionist literature and Zionist poetry." And to me, this is interesting because it relates to what I spoke on about the way the books I read sort of reflected what I already believed, in the way that just books and ideas and the stories we share can invade your mind and sort of help guide your experience through life, help guide your beliefs. And that quote specifically makes me think about, the importance of what you do here, finding representation, finding ways to, for lack of a better term in this moment, to invade people's minds with stories of people, to help them understand, to help them find common ground and find a sense of what's the word? Empathy, and sort of similar experience. You find this on TikTok, especially. I just, not to like hard pivot, but when you see people, I always like to talk about like the little kids in Africa who like to do TikTok dances. It's like you see these kids who are ostensibly, they live in entirely the other side of the earth. They live in an entirely different way from you, but they are literally just like kids in America. They just want to have fun. They want to dance. They want to have a good time. And so finding ways to find that understanding, I think, is really powerful.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, to what we were saying before about feeling connected, we miss out on so much when that quote, what is that? I'm going to mess it up, but that quote about nobody's free if anybody is, like, our freedoms are intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody, I'm thinking of multiple quotes all at the same time. Basically, injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere.
Yes,
right?
I think that's the correct
that one's
quote.
MLK Jr., I think, but
it's hard to rip this off the dome. So
yeah, well, just in that same vein. So if injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, inhumanity anywhere is inhumanity everywhere, and dehumanization. The same goes for dehumanization, I would say. And we have, I want to say Western society, America, but it just happens, is that there's a hyper categorization of people or of things, and just hyper labeling, and this is this box and this is this box, and all these things belong in different places, and alongside that is a lot of judgment, a lot of frankly racism, a lot of separation and compartmentalization. And humanity, it doesn't work like that, or it doesn't have to. And if we look at literacy as parallel to humanity, or kind of a key aspect of humanity, I think that point about connecting, about seeing these kids in Africa dancing and realizing, oh, these are just like the kids down the block. Mm-hmm. That's something special that Indy Reads, I feel like, is especially poised to be able to do. Where in our Lit Stage open mic, you could hear from one of our Afghan students learning English can come and share about their favorite poem or folklore, or I was talking with somebody earlier today about food and how that kind of has a similar effect of really like humanizing or creating common ground, right? Like your favorite cookie recipe. And thinking about this book and Rafat's story, one thing that has continued, a quote of James Baldwin's, that I've kind of attached to years ago and keeps coming up, especially when times are hard for me personally, or when I'm just as all of us are, some can be confronted with the reality of the world that we live in and things that are going on that don't feel just and don't feel safe and don't feel healthy and don't feel loving. When I struggle, I think of James Baldwin's line where he says, you think, and it's not a direct quote, I'm paraphrasing, but you
okay.
think your pain and suffering is unique in all the world. And then you read. And in reading, you realize that your pain and suffering is what connects you to all people who've suffered throughout history and the world, right? And I'm so grateful to get to be in a place where I get to work with a literacy organization and lead its vision and direction and programming so that we can, at our best, help encourage the reading and writing of our world, right? Let's understand the world that we live in, and let's together co-author something new and better.
Amazing. I want to talk about, well, you're not Lebanese. I'm Lebanese, half Lebanese, and you are Palestinian descent. Are both your parents Palestinian? So that means we are brother and sister by heritage. I, for breakfast, literally ate grape leaves, which is maybe the most Lebanese thing I've done in the past, 5 years. So,
it's not common. It's not an everyday thing.
I'm not culturally Lebanese. I am not. I am only genetically Lebanese.
Sahtin, anyway. Sahtin on your grapefruit. Do you know the Sahan? Sahohana? No? Okay.
You're over my.
Well, it's okay. We'll get there.
Please.
Sahtin is to your health
that's beautiful.
for eating.
I need that.
Yeah. Like bon appetit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited.
And Palestinians, we say saha is to your health. Sahtin is twice or doubled. We say it. We double it.
Dude, I want to learn Arabic so bad. But I was reading your, it was actually posted over there, but I saw it online. You did an interview with the South Side newspaper, and you said 2 people that influenced you the most in your life were your cities. My city, Mary Lou, still in Cincinnati, going strong.
Hey, Mary Lou.
Hi, Mary Lou. City, Mary Lou Zarick, that's my last name. And then Jiddo passed away. Jiddos?
Sido.
Oh, Sido. Okay. Yeah, that's slightly. So their names are Fatima and Hilwe.
Yeah.
Hilwe?
Hilwe.
Okay. Can you tell me about their influence on you? Or is that too long of an answer?
No, okay. You want me to be brief?
That's okay. Or it can be as long or as short as you want.
I'll try to be brief. It's sort of whenever I'm asked, like if you could just spend an evening with somebody throughout, right, in all of history, who would it be? And I think of them. Siti Fatima, my father's mom, she passed away when I was about 9. So I only got to meet her once. So they both still lived in Palestine. And I grew up here, so in the States. So the first time I got to go over there, I was 7, and I got to ride on my Sido's back, I remember, and got to sit down with Siti Fatima. And I just have a vivid visual memory of her, and we didn't have much conversation. And the story that I heard of her growing up was one of, she was a woman who was fairly young. She was a newly married and a young mom when her firstborn was about 2 in 1948, when the Zionist militia came into Palestine in their effort to establish Israel. So Israel was not yet in existence. Palestine at that time was a British colony, and these militant groups would come into villages and kick people out of their homes, take their homes, and scare them in every possible way with physical violence and or the threat of it. And my grandfather, Sithi's husband, was taken hostage. And there she was, a young mother in her home alone with her 2-year-old. And these militants were coming through the village, kicking people out of their homes. And the story was, and my father, since this is what my father remembered, and so anyway, I'll just go with it because it's the story that I know. The story was that she had been outside the home visiting with her parents just across the way when she saw the militants were coming through her village, and she ran back home because she knew that if they found the house empty, they would just take it. And the story was that she confronted militia at her door who came threatening to take it, and she stood her ground and said, you can take my life, but if you have to, you can't take my home. And for whatever reason, they walked away. And I say it's the story because we've since learned that that specific encounter may not have actually happened, but it's what I grew up knowing of her.
But even if it didn't to her, there may very well be another who had a similar or exact experience.
Very much, yeah, for sure. And it's not a story that's unique to the Marshood family by any means, right? I mean, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians experienced this in the late 1940s. And for my grandfather, who was her husband, every day for about 9 months, his life was threatened. The militants said, we'll probably kill you at the end of the day. And at some point, for whatever reason, we don't know, but he was released. And it was only after that he could come home and reunite with his wife and their baby. And then after that, my father was conceived. So I just wish I could sit down with her and, as a woman, as a mother, as a Palestinian, as a matriarch, and learn more from her courage and wisdom. And for Sitti Hilwe, Allah yirhamha, Allah yirhamhin tanain, God bless both of their souls. Hilwe, I got to know her a little bit more. She lived until my few months after my daughter was born. My daughter's now 9. My mom's mama. So her story is also one that kind of shapes who I am and who we are as a family, who we are as Palestinians, I think who we are as humans. She was married, also a young mama, in the late 1940s. She and her husband had welcomed their firstborn baby, little baby girl, Khalti Laila. And as was known to happen, the Zionist militia, one of the ways they created fear was to attack buses and commuter buses. And her husband was on a bus on his way to work when a Zionist militant went on a suicide mission and attacked a bus. And he was killed alongside, I think, everybody else on that bus. And at that time, family, he was an Abu Dalu, is his last name. So the family, the way that families around then would help cope with the fact that there are now young widows was to keep the families together and have that widowed mother remarry another from the same family. So she then married her deceased husband's brother, and their child together, their first child together. Their first child together was Widad, and she lived till she was about 2, and she got sick and died. But then the next one was Miriam, my mom. And Hilwe, again, a matriarch. She did not learn to read, but she helped her husband with managing his books and the finances of the house. And both of my grandmothers raised 7 children each, in a time of a loss of national independence. isolation and segregation of communities. But I'll say too, if I may, I know you wanted a brief answer, I think, but Siti Hilwe was, she raised my mom with a very human and human-centered ideology and way of being, which is that my mama remembers growing up and celebrating Easter, Ramadan, Passover with neighbors and friends. Like, it was a very, oh, this is your holiday and this is important to you. I'm going to bring a dish and celebrate with you. And I think that is a reminder of both what Palestine had been, and what it can still be. And beyond Palestine, I think it's a little spark of what's possible if we all share with each other kindness and humanity and appreciation.
Don't worry about the lack of brevity. That was a far more in-depth and beautiful way of telling me what I asked than I had ever expected. So don't.
Thank you for that.
That was wonderful. Actually, what I did mark it. I'm going to go ahead and read the poem now because I just think it's a beautiful poem, which is the namesake poem of this book. It's called "If I Must Die," which is such a dark thing to say, but he is dead.
Yes.
It says, "If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white, a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite, you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope, let it be a tale." And he wrote that on November 27th, 2011.
2023. And it was like, I think a week or so before he was killed. Do you remember?
It says it was titled 2011.
Oh, okay.
It was much longer.
Okay. I thought it
But
was
it's a beautiful
recent.
poem.
It is beautiful.
And just makes me think about both what you talked about, but also just how, there's so much more to our legacies and the way we live on than just our lives, and how important that we keep people like Rafat in our minds, and your grandparents.
Thank you.
And my grandparents. I need to call my city. My wife keeps telling me to go visit as she is getting old. Sorry, I didn't mean to get you like that.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I don't mind.
All right.
Also, important to Middle Eastern and Lebanese and Palestinian culture is food.
Always.
And I want you to tell me where to get good Lebanese food in this town. Now, real quick, Bosphorus is right around the corner. I still have not been, but the Turks think they own everything.
They're still riding high.
They're still riding high off the Ottoman Empire. They will not ever let it go. Is there a place other than Bosphorus to get that style of food?
I have to say, shout out to Bosphorus. Their food is good. But I grew up calling it Arabic coffee, not Turkish coffee.
See? They think they own everything. The cradle of civilization. They're like, oh, we made baklava. We made doner. Shut up.
Or maybe they inspired it, but we perfected it. Well, we could do a whole podcast on the different battles there, like whose is best. Like, I know Palestinian falafel is the best falafel.
Yeah, and
just
everyone says
hands
that,
down,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Everyone says that. I do not have an answer for you. Having been here for 3.5, almost 4 years, I will say there's a place called Al Basha. I think it's in Fishers.
I can drive to Fisher's.
When I came upon they have a market and a restaurant. And I confess I haven't actually eaten in the restaurant yet. But I was very excited to come upon the market. So if you want fresh grape leaves, fresh, maybe canned or bagged, za'atar, any of the good ingredients,
Go up there.
go there.
Okay.
They have Palestine soda, which
I don't even know what that
think
means.
it's new. Just in the last couple of years, the company, it's not even based in Palestine. I think it's a European. I don't remember which country. Sorry, but wanted to kind of in solidarity with Palestine and in kind of wanting to create an alternative to Coca-Cola, basically. So came up with Palestine soda.
I see.
Or Palestine cola. So
I'm
they've
gonna
got
tell you
that.
my past. So I don't have. My father is the Lebanese man. I don't have a good relationship with him any longer, but he did give me a care package this past week, which is why I have grape leaves.
That's so sweet.
So we're thinking. So I did eat grape leaves this morning. I have svia
Nice.
in my fridge, and I've also eaten kibbeh and eggs this week. I'm like I've had the whole suite of.
You started by saying you are not culturally Lebanese. Like that is, like you can't get more.
Okay,
Lebanese.
maybe I have more going for me than I thought.
Yes.
Now I just need to learn how to speak the language, and I'll be really there. But I I went to college when I was in RA at Indiana University. I was in McNutt, which is like the party dorm. But two of the other RAs, funnily enough, were Lebanese as well, and we would always they were far more Lebanese. They both spoke Arabic, but we all sort of got together with that.
College was a special time for me too, with being Arab American.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, I was even though New Jersey has a very healthy Arab population, and Paterson, New Jersey, in particular, has Arab but also Palestinian community. I grew up south of there in a small town in which I was the only one in my school that was Arab, certainly the only one Palestinian, and one of few that whose family might identify as Muslim. And so spent a lot of time, even my name Ruba, it's in Arabic, it's Ruba.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of anglicizing,
Very
making
common.
myself more
Even
accessible.
Zarick is definitely not the way you say that.
No, and I've been trying to figure it out since I first saw
We
your
do
name.
come from
but I don't-
the
Christian Lebanese, I was raised Catholic, but not Muslim.
Yeah.
So I assume that has an effect, but certainly not that much of an effect.
I don't know that it would have much of an effect on the language and pronunciation, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have to ask your father. But all to say, when I went to college, there was an organization of Arab students, and there was a Palestine solidarity group, and that was like a special place where I got to connect. Oh my gosh, there are so many more people who have this experience of being Arab American or Palestinian American, and having different dialects and accents. And I learned a lot of Egyptian, Arabic, but all to say, it's a beautiful time when you get to connect like that as young adults.
So Bill Brooks asked me a question just to share with you, although it is an Indy Reads question, so we'll circle back to that. He said, and I forget the exact wording, I should have written it down. That was the one homework I didn't do, is get the question from yesterday. He said, what can Indy Reads do to better Indianapolis? What's next? What's your next initiative? Where are you looking?
Well, so over the last 2 years, we've seen a 233% increase in demand for our classes.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. And our fundraising efforts, though successful, have nowhere near grown at that
You
same
have not
pace.
gotten 233% increase in funding.
We have not
certainly
grown
not at this time either.
233%. We have grown over the last 3 years, and yes, at this time, we are facing some challenges in that regard, as many are. The short answer would be we got to keep doing what we're doing, and the longer answer would be that if literacy truly is about reading and writing our world, and deepening our sense of shared humanity, then our initiatives and our vision for advancing literacy for all includes what we already are doing, which, in some ways is from the community classroom side is a bit survival, right? Learning the skills, earning some diplomas to be able to enter and advance in work and participate more in your child's life and education. And beyond that, there is thriving through the space and the programming that we host and organize through our bookstore. We are continuously evolving. I want to say evolving, not necessarily expanding, but evolving to more intentionally engage our learners and their families. So most of our adult learners are parents or caregivers to young children, and children whose parents struggle with literacy are 72% more likely to struggle with literacy themselves. So we have a multi-generational approach to our work that is continuously evolving. And beyond that, we are expanding our work to create space and opportunity for folks who, again, have been on the margins of society, margins of the economy, margins of experiences here, to recognize, realize, and fulfill their sense of agency in both as participants in society and leaders in their own right. And our work will be to help foster and nurture and cultivate that.
Very good answer. Beautiful. So one thing that I've been thinking about a lot, and I don't know if Sam shared it with you, is how books quite literally have the power to create entire cultures or communities around them. I think of Harry Potter. I think of Game of Thrones, Twilight, the Bible, the Quran. I also think of the Communist Manifesto, or on the other side, like Mein Kampf, unfortunately, or actually just unfortunately, not even an or. And I just have been thinking about how powerful words can be. And again, I don't really have any questions or ways to think about it. Do you have any sort of thoughts on that, sort of the power of the written word?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to, again, we've been speaking before we were writing, and so those books that you cite and many others were ideas before they were print on a page.
I had that thought.
And not to take anything away from either aspect of that, but I just think it's important to remember that these books were written by somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And to write them meant having ideas and thoughts and stories to tell, right? And if you look at the Quran or the Bible, there are different beliefs on how these books came about, right? And kind of the stories that make them up. So I think it's the power of an idea and how you transfer that idea can be in the written word. And that comes back to Brother Rafat's message, right? Of that writing can be, the written word can be your legacy. And I wouldn't limit it to just books necessarily. But one thought I had, and Sam did share it with me, one thought I had immediately when you mentioned the Quran was that the first word that the Quran cites as the quote from the angel Gabriel speaking to the Prophet Muhammad was read. The very first word he said to him was read.
How very serendipitous.
Yes. And I think that speaks believe in the Quran or not, right? Like, but just the idea that a whole group of people understand that the very first word God had to say to humans was read, gives us the chance to again remember that there's power in ideas, that there's power in seeking understanding. And with that, I tend to lean towards curiosity. And when we lean into that, I think that we build community, whether it's because of there's agreement or we foster a space for healthy disagreement that can take us, generate new levels of understanding. As for the texts themselves, there's something special, and this is going to show my age, but there's something so special about being able to hold a book, turn the pages, like smell them.
The smell is
it's a real thing.
it takes you. I mean, I think about it always takes me back to my elementary school library.
Yeah.
For some reason, and like the Scholastic Book Fair. There's nothing like it, but it also, like you said, it shows our age. There's that you can read anyway.
You can, but you can flip back and forth. You can kind of,
there's
something beautiful about that. And I think that the fact that a written word can create community is beyond books, but that's also the Constitution of our country here in the US, right? It was a group of people came together, shared some ideas and wrote them down, and there was the founding document of what created the idea of the United States and the idea of its democracy, which necessitates full, comprehensive literacy and participation.
Full circle.
Yep.
I also want to leave on one note about myself, and I have one last question. I have found that I am a terrible reader, and by terrible, I mean actually excellent. In that I read so slowly. Two of the books I mentioned earlier were both 100 pages, which is a very small book in my opinion, although in some people's opinion, very long, but for me, very small. I'm a fantasy reader, and many of these fantasy books are thousands of pages, not thousands, hundreds. And the reason I say I'm a bad reader is because what will happen is I will read a paragraph and I will go, yes. And then I will think about it for like 10 minutes and I will make no progress in the book. So, and the reason I say I'm an excellent reader is because I think, at least me, that's probably a very good thing.
It is.
Or, I mean, any reaction, but in the moment I was saying yes, but even saying no and then thinking about it is probably also good.
You're taking the time to digest it and reflect upon it. I think we all need to take more time to do that, both as we're reading, but also in daily work and
in any interactions.
Yeah.
Okay, one final question, and I don't know if you picked up on this, but I need you to ask the next guest a question, and it can be about anything. It does not have to be about reading. It does not have to be about community. Whatever you feel in your heart, what would you like to ask the next Third Space Indy guest?
Okay. What is something that you are looking forward to doing? And why haven't you done it yet?
A very similar question was asked previously, which was by Mark Lotta, which you know him? Yeah, he asked, if you were not afraid, what would you do? Which is a very similar, maybe very Mark way of asking a question. Yours is a very Ruba way of asking a question. Well, anyways, thank you for joining me, Ruba, on this episode of Third Space Indy. Indy Reads in, you don't call this downtown, in Fountain Square. Please come check it out. It's a nonprofit bookstore, or come volunteer. I'm sure Ruba would love if you volunteered. And I'm sure she would also love to chat with you as well, but I don't know if she has time.
I would love all of
so.
the above. And just to say, I want to push back. We're a nonprofit bookstore. Yes, We have a bookstore, and it is an arm of our work. We're a nonprofit literacy organization. How's that?
Okay, I'm sorry, I failed.
No, you just stop. You know,
Oh
you
wait,
do
no,
this.
you told it. You wait.
I've
You
noticed
said.
that.
You said. Oh, you said. I know what you're
was
gonna
gonna
say.
say-
I'm too down on myself.
Yes, you're so you. There's enough judgment to go around in this world. You don't need to give
I
it
try to push
yourself.
away ego.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna blame Sam. It's a nonprofit literary organization, not a bookstore. Sam, work on the messaging.
Sam would be very upset to hear that from you.
She'll probably listen to the podcast.
She will.
Anyways, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Third Space Indy. You can find me on Instagram at Third Space Indy. You can also go to thirdspaceindy.com where you can find, I write a blog. Please read the blog. I work so hard on it. I write like 1,000 words every time there's an episode. And then you can also put your email in and I will send it to you Monday morning when the episode releases. Anyways, see you next time. And I hope to share the next episode of Third Space Indy with you. Ruba, can I get a high five?
High five. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for visiting.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Third Space Indy. A special shout out to Sam Ferrante and Gene Miller, without whom this episode would not have happened. And of course, to the rest of the Indy Reads team working just as hard down there in Fountain Square. If you're interested in learning more about Indy Reads, you can go to indyreads.org. And if you'd like to donate, head to indyreads.org/donate. Of course, there's always a link in the show notes. Today's intro music was the Indy Reads jingle created and donated by Vinny Corsaro. And the outro music is, as always, the song Scared Rabbit by the local artist Jennison. Thanks for taking the time to listen to the episode, and I look forward to sharing the next episode of Third Space Indy with you. Masalama.